Hey, it's Erica. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of January. And right now, so if you watched my last video on this channel, you saw me in this hat. I'm still wearing this hat. I'm wearing a different shirt though, because as you can tell, like, sun is blasting through right now. So after I filmed my last video, I had like a light gray sweater on. I was like, let me change to something darker, because I can't tell how it's gonna come out in the film. Like if it's just gonna be blasting, that gray sweater is just gonna be blasting reflected sunlight at the camera. I'm not entirely sure, but that's why I am in a different outfit. But the same damn hat in my house. Why am I wearing a hat in my house? I'm wearing a hat in my house because it's incredibly cold outside. I was outside doing like errands and stuff this morning, and when I got home and I was gonna film, I went to take my hat off and I was like, oh dear God, this is a horrible case of hat hair or hat head or whatever, so the hat is staying on. So that is why I am wearing a hat in my house like an asshole. And so thank you, I will not be taking further questions about that. Anyway, well, how many? I read so many freaking books in the month of January. I think that it was 14. Now, before we are like, what? About half of those I think are audiobooks. So take from that what you will. You know, audiobooks, it doesn't take a lot of, like, I don't have to find a lot of time to devote to listening to the audiobook. Like I can multitask. So that's skewing the numbers here. I don't want to give the impression sitting down and physically reading 14 books. There have been months where I've done that, but this was not one of them. So overall, this month of reading was kind of mixed. There were books that, man, I had the time of my life, but I do have some books that it didn't go so well. So I'm gonna start like I typically do. We're gonna talk about what I liked the least. We'll go to what I liked the best, and yeah, finish on. I guess we'll finish on what I technically liked the best this month, although I haven't quite decided. There might be some controversy where, because I do have a couple of 5-star books, but I don't know if the 5-star books are actually my favorite that I read this month. We'll get there. Anyway, I did have one DNF, and I am really disappointed that I DNF'd this, but you know what? Life is too short. I got way too many fucking books to keep going with ones that I don't want to read. In this case, in ones that I don't want to listen to. This was Malcolm Lives by Ibram X. Kendi. This is a biography of Malcolm X. I have really wanted to read some Malcolm X like biographies or autobiographies lately, so I started with this one because it was available from my library really fast. There's a lot of stuff there that have a wait, but this one was available. It's a biography of Malcolm X. I don't know if it's YA or aimed, I don't think it's aimed lower than that. I think it's probably YA, but it's supposed to be a biography of Malcolm X for like not adult readers. Okay, why did I have to DNF this? So it was, the content that it was presenting, I think was fine, you know, like, cause it was just talking about Malcolm's roots, you know, where he grew up, what his childhood was like. What really I couldn't abide, and it's what made me stop, is the author kept speculating as to things that Malcolm and people in his life felt or said or did, and it was jarring because this is supposed to be a biography, which is supposed to be nonfiction, and it just really rubbed me the wrong way that the author was throwing in all of this weird speculation about things like actions and feelings and thoughts and shit. It was just weird. The author would say things like, Malcolm probably felt this way, or Malcolm's mother might have yelled at these people get out of my house, or it was just bizarre in a biography to have that kind of speculation happening. Apparently this book has won awards or something, so look, I presume that most people really like it. But if it hadn't been presented as a biography, I think I probably could have got, like, it wouldn't have bothered me, I think. It was too, I couldn't, because it's supposed to be a nonfiction biography of this real person, I couldn't cross that bridge. It just didn't work. So I had to DNF it. I did, however, I just got, I'm pulling it up now, so forgive me for looking down. I did get the Malcolm X biography. It's the one that's told to, oh God, what is it? Alex Haley? Yeah, the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's by Malcolm X and Alex Haley. I know that that one is, really well respected, so I am hoping that obviously it's told by the author, so, or you know, the actual person. It's an autobiography, so presumably Malcolm X is not speculating on his own thoughts to guess wildly what they might have been. So I think that's gonna be a safer bet. This was the one that I wanted, that I preferred to start with anyway. It just wasn't available when I went to, you know, when I wanted to listen to something that was like a biography of Malcolm X. That's why I chose the other one first. But this was the one that I preferred. So I will be picking that up. The next one that I'll talk about is, this is gonna be a real weird one to list as such a low rating because I love the author, but I hated this presentation. This was another audiobook. This was a full cast production. So I'll put it up here. This was the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. I love Agatha Christie. She's one of my very favorite authors of all time, like hands down. I've read her books multiple times, starting when I was a very young child. I was probably about 7 when I first read an Agatha Christie novel, and I just fell in love with it immediately. They're kind of like comfort reads to me at this point, just because I've been reading her for so long. So for me to rate this, I rated this as a 2-star. That's pretty bad, because I really like this book, but it was the production, honestly, that pissed me off, and this might sound petty, because I believe it's Peter Dinklage that's doing the voice of Poirot in this, which I really liked him. I thought in general it was fine, but what it kept doing, because it's like a full production of this book, they kept doing these sound effects that I couldn't tolerate, to the point where I was having to fast forward just to get through the part like where the sound effects were being played, get through it and have it be done. It was intolerable, and it bumped this way down to a 2-star for me, because that just made me mad, and made me mad to the point like it was unlistenable. And for me to do that with a story from like one of my all-time favorite authors of all time, you gotta piss me off pretty bad to get to that point. So maybe sound effects won't bother you, but normally I'm not a person where I'm like, oh, I can't deal with noises or whatever. This pissed me off, so I guess maybe you'll have a different experience than I did, but that was my feelings on it. I guess my 3 lowest books are audiobooks. So I also listened to the biography of Dolly Parton, Ain't Nobody's Fool. That is by, I'm looking at my little list, so forgive me. That is by Martha Ackmann. I rated this 3 stars. This just came out, I think, in the last few months. There was a super long list at my library to get it, but I finally did. I listened to it. I thought it was fine. The pacing felt weird. It felt like we spent way too much time on parts of her childhood and then just glossed over significant decades of her adult life, especially because that's when, you know, she's had her career. No, I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not like a huge Dolly Parton fan or anything, except that I feel like she's like a national treasure. She just has always come across as such a positive person. Everything I know about her is positive. I know that she seems to be a very generous person as well. You know, the things that she does for like charity and especially with supporting kids and like helping child literacy and everything, I have a lot of respect for that too. So I mean, I didn't go into it being like, I'm #1 Dolly Parton fan and I have expectations. It wasn't like that. I really didn't have any expectations. It's just, the pacing was weird. It just didn't make sense to me why they would choose to focus on certain things and then just kind of like skim over others. I also felt it weird. The author was throwing in from time to time just these real random statistics. It felt odd. You know what it felt like? Because I read, maybe last year, I read that book Hey Hun, which was a memoir of a woman who got wrapped up in and really successful in an MLM. And that author also randomly would throw in statistics in the middle of telling a story, and it was just strange. When that book did it, it felt like the editor had been like, oh, you know what, we should like cram some kind of official study result in here. Like, give ourselves some credibility or some shit. That's kind of what it felt like in this book, but in an even weirder way, because like the memoir was being written by the author. So like the person who was talking about their own experience, whereas this is a biography, so it felt even weirder. I don't know. It wasn't for me, unfortunately. But maybe Dolly Parton fans, like people who go in being like a huge fan of Dolly Parton, maybe have different feelings about it. I also read, this was a 3.5-star book. I read The Forgotten Beasts of Eld. Let me pull this up here. Like, no, I do have this little book. I read The Forgotten Beasts of Eld. Forgive me, I'm going to try to angle this in such a way that the light is not blasting it through the window. This is by Patricia A. McKillip. This was written, I believe, in the 70s, and I ended up enjoying this story, especially for being like so small. I think it was less than 300 pages in here. Yeah, this was like, I don't know, 225 pages or so. A lot of story goes into this little book, and it's, I know I've said it so many times, I like longer stories. I like fleshing out worlds and characters and taking a slower pace. I do like that, but it's refreshing to be able to mix it up with authors who can deliver a rich story in a much smaller page count too. I really liked this too. You can really tell the different storytelling styles based on like the eras when things are written. You can tell this is older. Like the author is getting a lot more to the point than I think that we see at this point in time with fantasy books that come out. And I thought it was a really nice change of pace. So yeah, if you're looking for like an older fantasy that you just wanna pick up for a little change of pace, and this is a great standalone option, I think. And I did read this as part of my Reddit bingo fantasy reading, so I knocked one off the list with that. Okay. I then read, so I read The Wrath of the Triple Goddess by Riordan. This was another one that I rated 3.5 stars. I feel like I have briefly talked about this in another video recently. So with Percy Jackson, for the adult books now that we're in, well, they're not adult. I guess that they're not middle grade anymore, right? Are they like YA now with like The Wrath of the Triple Goddess? Regardless, it's like the second series. I think this is the senior years or something like that. I like the plot lines of this. You can tell the author is trying to age up the characters and some of the things that are happening. The problem at this stage is I still just really fucking hate Annabeth. To the point where, because she's basically I don't know, I think she's 18 in these books. If she's not 18, she's almost 18. And she has like made no character growth since the series started. She is still just really like nasty to everybody in her attitude, like the things that she says and everything. And I could deal with that like when she was a kid, you know, when the series started. And I know that character development is really not, I don't know, at least it doesn't jump out to me as a priority for the author in this series. There doesn't seem to be a lot of depth to these characters in general. You see it somewhat, I guess, with Percy the most, more of, you know, anyone. He's the main character, but everyone else just kind of like surface level characters. So unfortunately for me, when I've got characters that aren't that complex to begin with, but you've got one like Annabeth that you're leading with her just being an asshole all the time, but you're supposed to like her because she got a heart of gold or whatever. No, I just can't do it. You got to give me something to root for, and she's just such an asshole to everybody all the time. So for that reason, I don't know if I can continue the series. Genuinely, which sounds crazy, right? These are like books that are supposed to be lighthearted, and it's a fictional series aimed at like teens now, and I'm like, this one teen character is just pissing me off. But that's where I'm at. That is what do the youth say? That is my truth, and I have to live in it. So I don't know. Maybe you love you know what? Let me talk about this. Oh boy, I was about to say maybe you love Annabeth. You know what? You probably do love Annabeth, because after I finished this book, I took to the internet because I'm like, I can't be the only person who's got strong negative feelings about this character. I cannot be. I took to the internet to see, how do people feel about this character Annabeth. It turns out the Percy Jackson fandom, at least online, is, I don't know that they know that this is a fictional series and that none of these events are happening and that none of these characters are real. I came away from looking, I went deep down a rabbit hole, looking through those things for a few days, all over the internet, and I came away with the impression that like the hardcore Percy Jackson fans, which are presumably adults with the way that they're writing about the series, which makes it even weirder, that I'm not convinced that they know that this is like a fantasy series that's not real. There seems to be huge infighting within the fandom about like character pairings. A lot of like, if anybody, well, I shouldn't say, there's a significant part of the fandom that seems to be hardcore writing to the defense of Annabeth, to anyone who's like, I don't like this character. There is a huge faction, it appears, within the Percy Jackson fandom who is just like rabid foaming at the mouth when they hear somebody doesn't like her. So yeah, that you learn some weird things, you know. When I finish a book, I do like to see what other people's opinions are, and if I don't know anyone that's like read it, I will take to the internet and just be like, what are people thinking about this? Anybody sharing my thoughts or what? If it's a book that I'm gonna like review here, I don't do that. Like if I'm gonna do an actual video where I give an actual review, I don't do that because I don't want to be influenced by anybody else's opinion. So I won't look at other opinions typically until after I've done a review myself. But I don't do that many like dedicated review videos here on my channel, so most books, when I finish them, I will take to the internet and be like, what is everybody else thinking about this? I'm curious. But that's what I learned. That's what I learned is Percy Jackson has kind of a real interesting fan base. It's the kind of like, ooh, I don't even know. I don't even know what to compare it to. Those people are very invested. That's all I'm gonna say. There's people who are very invested in the Percy Jackson world. I do plan to watch the series though that's on Disney. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but that is on my list to watch that series. Okay, and then I also, next book on my list, I listened to an audiobook. This was also a full cast production. This was Moriarty, The Silent Order, and I really enjoyed this book. This is basically an audio, like a full cast production series. I don't know if they're going to do more. I think probably they will. They've got a good setup with it. And Dominic Monaghan plays Moriarty. So this is basically like a Sherlock but turned on its head, where who you think are the good guys might not be the good guys, and Moriarty is not actually like a bad guy. He's a lot of things, just circumstances have worked out to where some shit's gone down. So I think it's a really interesting twist on some Sherlock Holmes lore. So if you're looking for something like that, I thought that it was really fun to listen to. I've listened to 2 of them now, and if they make more, I plan to listen to more of them. These are Audible exclusives. I don't subscribe to Audible generally. Over the holidays, I got a deal that was like 99 cents a month for 3 months, so I did subscribe to that just to get that like 99-cent, because I don't want to give a ton of money to Amazon for books when I don't have to. I try to support like actual bookstores or like buying from the authors directly. So I trying to be mindful about that, but there were some audio, like free audio things that I was down to listen to, so I did subscribe to that deal. So yeah, that was what I listened to as part of my very cheap 3-month subscription. That is, I think I just canceled that a few days ago, so that should be ending. I've got to like try to read through all of the listen to, I guess, all of the freely available audiobooks or podcasts or whatever on there before that ends. My last 3.5-star book is objectively probably a 4-star book. If I was rating this objectively, it'd be a solid 4, I think. But I rate based on my own feelings about it, and that is subjective. So I'm giving it a 3.5, but it is through no fault of the author, and I really need to make this clear because I thought the author objectively did a great job. So let me put the book up here so you can see what I'm talking about first, and then I will get into it. So I read Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman, and this was my first Christopher Buehlman book, and I know it's gotten a lot of discussion online in the past few years. It's not really well known out in the real world. Like, people I've talked to in general in real life like outside have not heard of this. Even though they might have heard of like his other book, you know, Black Ten Thief. I think that that's a really well-known one. I haven't encountered anybody in real life who has heard of Between Two Fires, but online it's a super well-loved book. So it's been on my list for a while. I read this as part of my Reddit bingo reading. I rated it 3.5 stars, even though quality and everything about it is at least a 4-star book. Christopher Buehlman did a great job. My rating is no fault of his own, and I'm going to explain why. So this book takes place, I believe, around 1350 in Normandy, and so it takes place during the Black Plague. It is a fantasy. It's like a historical fantasy horror story. It's a standalone. And so it's a real interesting mashup of genres. I thought it was well executed. The plot was interesting. The characters were interesting. The writing was good. like, I have no critical complaints really about any of that. I also love it was a standalone and executed really well in like a reasonable number of pages. He did a lot of lore building and a lot of shit went down in a fairly small number of pages. The reason that I rated it a 3.5, again, purely my own issues, is because, so this takes place during the Black Plague, and it was wild to me that I walked away from this feeling the way that I did, because I've always found like the historical time periods of the plague really fascinating. You know, how devastating it was to global populations, but I think what I have found since living through like COVID and all that shit, I don't know if it's still too soon for me to be reading a story where there's like an active plague killing people or what, but like the Black Plague, obviously incredibly deadly, you know, killed millions, so way more severe than what we dealt with. Again, thankfully I don't want anything like that happening in the modern day, so I'm not equating the two things. This was like the plague, the bubonic plague, it was clearly worse than what we dealt with a couple years ago. But you know, I took it seriously a few years ago with, you know, like my lifestyle changed for over a year because I was being really like conscientious to stay away from people, and like I stayed in my house the majority of the time, you know, not only going out for like things that I absolutely had to do. And so it was a difficult time for a lot of us, I think, and I think it might just still be too soon for me to be able to really enjoy a story about a plague, even if it's like in a fantasy setting, which again is wild to me because before all of that happened, I loved reading about like the periods in history where the plague was going through. Apparently not. Apparently it's not in a place to do that at this point in my life. So no, it was no discredit to the author on this. He wrote a great story. I really recommend it. I understand why people like it so much. It's just, it's not, I couldn't, unfortunately, I don't know when it's going to change, if it will change. I just can't, I guess, do stories about about diseases ravaging the lands at this point yet. All right, I'm back. I had to go change my laundry. Let us continue. And then after that, I read, I guess these are all going to be 4 stars. I won't go too into this one because I just talked about something similar. I also listened to the full cast production of Moriarty, The Devil's Game. This was the first book in that Moriarty, like full audio, like cast audio. Really enjoyed it. Rated it 4 stars. Same thing as the one I just talked about, so I won't really go further into that. And I read Dave Barry Hits Below the Beltway by Dave Barry. This was a 4-star read. I love Dave Barry. I've read Dave Barry since I was a kid. We, you know, back in my day when we actually got like newspapers, I read the newspaper like every day. I was that child. And I always loved to see when we would have like Dave Barry's column. And so I was reading Dave Barry starting at a very young age. I've always loved his sense of humor, and I've read, I don't know, I've read a lot of the books that he put out over the years, and I just think he's very funny. So I read that one. This, the Dave Barry Hits Below the Beltway is a, critique of the like the federal government and how everything functions. And frankly, I wasn't intending to read that because of like the general mood right now in the US, or at least I don't know, many millions of us, our general mood towards the bullshit going on from the US government right now. But it worked out. It was a refreshing book to read. So I always recommend Dave Barry though. I've got a another book already lined up. I'm probably going to read from him the next few months too. So, ooh, very shiny. I read The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. This is a debut novel from this author and just so well done. This is supposed to be more of like a cozy, like a more lighter fantasy, and it just really delivered what I was hoping for it to. We follow our main character. She like travels around. She tells fortunes for people from her little wagon, and only small fortunes though. She doesn't tell fortunes that are like any level of significance. She doesn't want that kind of pressure or responsibility, so she will only tell people like inconsequential fortunes. One day she tells a fortune to a man who comes to see her. She thinks it's just gonna be something that like doesn't really mean anything, but it turns out to be a pretty big deal with the fortune. His daughter is missing, and she tells him a fortune that involves his daughter. So then they end up teaming up. They become like a very found family kind of grouping that goes through the rest of the story. They team up. There's a couple of other people that join the party as well, and they travel around searching for this man's missing daughter. And our main character, she's a mage, and this like guild of mages is really wanting her to come and do her magic, like use her magical abilities with them as part of like helping the country. But our main character really doesn't want to do that. She's got a lot of like personal demons that she's dealing with as far as her feelings about the level of her power, and so a lot of the story too is watching her, you know, try to deal with some of these feelings and figure out what she wants to do, what her power means for her in her life, and like what her choices are to go forward in a way that's going to make her happy with how she can live. I just really enjoyed this book quite a lot. It gave me exactly what I wanted it to. It was a very positive feeling reading through this book, and man, that's what I need sometimes. And we're gonna talk about one in a few minutes that I think is gonna be a good example where it's like I loved it, but I ended up having a positive feeling about it, but it takes some work to get through some of the books I read, but this was lovely. I'm really looking forward to reading more from this author too. And then I listened to the full cast audio production of the Mysterious Affair at Styles, again by Agatha Christie, and again this was, I believe, Peter Dinklage in the role of Hercule Poirot. I won't go too much into this except to say I liked it more obviously than the other one because I rated this 4 stars rather than 2, but there really were not any like obnoxious sound effects in this one. So yeah, if you want to listen to Agatha Christie on audio, this was great. Recommend it. Again, what more is there to say? It's Agatha Christie as a full cast production. My next 2 books are both 4.5 stars, but what different styles and tones and directions these books took. So they're both fantasy, but quite different. So each month this year, my plan is to read a book in the 2 longer series that I'm working on right now. So my 2 longer series that I'm reading through, I guess one of them is just an author in general, is John Gwynne. Planning to read all of his books before the end of 2026. My goal is like 1 John Gwynne book per month. My other goal is to continue reading through Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. I'm about halfway through the Cosmere right now. I'm following a specified reading list, so I'm about halfway through. Again, I'm planning to read 1 book per month on that. If all goes according to plan, I should be caught up sometime in the year 2027, depending on how many books he puts out before then. But with the amazing news, which I just mentioned in my last video too, the amazing news that he's finally like gotten a production deal and everything for his Cosmere. Like I believe they're gonna do at least Mistborn movies and then at least Stormlight TV show, right? Is what I understand. I don't know if they'll be doing more than that, maybe, not sure, but this is going to take, he's acknowledged this is going to take a lot of his focus for the moment. So maybe he won't put out like 10 more books before the end of next year, because if he doesn't, then I might actually catch up. So let's talk about these two books, because they're both 4.5-star books, but very different types of books. So 4.5 stars, The Alloy of Law by Mr. Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the second Mistborn era. And this takes place, I think, a couple hundred years after the first era. So after everything, all of the events that happened in Mistborn Era 1, which I will not go into and spoil, we pick up here. Different characters completely, of course, because we are a significant amount of time later. And I had a blast reading this. And I don't just mean I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was funny. I was not expecting to go into this book and being like, wow, this book is so funny. It was funny. Brandon Sanderson is a funny guy when he wants to be a funny guy. There were parts of this book I was laughing out loud, and not because it was stupid, but because, like, it was funny. The whole tone here was very different from Mistborn Era 1. You know, when reading through Mistborn Era 1 there are some lighter things in it, but it's everyone there is living under oppression, you know, people in danger all of the time, like having to save the world and shit. Like it's not a light-hearted romp. Era 1 is not. This, though, kind of a light-hearted romp. We've got our two main characters, and they're basically, they've spent the past few years like out kind of in the Wild West, and like being law enforcement out there, and now they're back in the city, and they're having to go through and like solve this series of crimes that are happening. They don't start out having to do that, but like they take it upon themselves to do so. And so we watch them like do the investigation and try to thwart this like series of crimes and shit that's going on. I had a great time with this. I don't know if the rest of Era 2 is the same kind of tone or approach to telling the story as this, but I'm down if it is. This was so much fun and I loved it. I flew through this book. I'm very excited to continue on. Having said all of that, all of my LOLs that I got in this book, right? There were no LOLs in the next book that I read, but I loved this book. I read Malice by Gwynne. Oh my goodness, this is so shiny. Hold on. It's got that like wrapping on the dust jacket that's just making it so freaking shiny. The sunblast and there's no way. So I read Malice by Gwynne. This is the Grimmock Press edition. I did order Valor as well. I don't know when that's coming. I think that it's supposed to come Q1 of this year at some point, but who knows. Anyway, Grimmock Press books, by the way, are really amazing quality. So I mean, if you're looking for like a high quality special edition of a book, these are really worth the money. I know at this point, like I am being very selective about what I'm purchasing. That's not a necessity, but I don't have any regrets if I purchase something. I don't have very many from Grimmock, but I have a few, and the ones that I have are just really beautiful, and I think they're doing great work with the books that they're producing. So having said all of that, this is Malice, of course, by Gwynne. This is book 1 in the Faithful and the Fallen series. There's 4 books in this series, and this is really more in the lines of just like traditional epic fantasy. It's a lot of political intrigue, and you can tell in this book the pieces are being set for a massive war or even series of wars to happen. You can feel that tension building through this entire book, and I loved it. I was gripped like from the beginning. And I mean, this is not a small book. Look at this thing. This is not a small book. I think it's over 600 pages. Yeah, this is over 600 pages. I still flew through this. It was easy to read. Just everything worked really well for me. I like the character development that he's doing. The main character in this, because we follow different points of view in this story, but I feel there is a main character, Corbin. Maybe other people disagree. I don't know. I haven't really looked at reviews or other opinions on this because I typically try not to do that until I'm done with the series, because I don't want to be accidentally spoiled or have my perception altered by maybe people who have finished the series, so they know like their attitudes towards certain characters or events are gonna like color my thoughts on them, and I don't want to do that. So I haven't looked to see if people agree that Corbin is in fact the main character of this, even though we follow several different perspectives consistently throughout the story. But that's my current position, is that he's the main character. I love this child. And I mean, I know he's not a child now. By the end of the book, he's like an older teen, but don't care. Love him. I'm all in. I'm all in on Corbin. He is so endearing, and I just really want him to succeed and not die, please. Mr. John Gwynne, please don't kill him by the end of this series. Please don't. Just don't. I loved it, and this was a 4.5-star read for me. Again, a lot of darker things happening in this book. You know, there's a lot of death, like I said, a lot of tension. So there's a build up to war, different political factions, a lot of like underlying magic we haven't really seen a lot yet, but I feel like we probably will in subsequent books. I don't know for sure, but I feel like we are alluding to what's going to be a bigger reveal, to see like some more impactful magic. We see it limitedly here, but I suspect it's because this is just the beginning. I hope it's because this is just the beginning, because the potential is really good for what I think it could be used for, to drive a lot of interesting story. Anyway, without spoiling anything, those are my thoughts on Malice. I loved it, and I'm currently reading the second book, Valor, and I'm loving that too. So excellent choice for myself. 10 out of, well, okay, I guess not 10 out of 10, because I didn't rate this a 5-star book or a 10-star book, but it's 4.5-star book. Why not 5? To be honest, I really couldn't say why not 5. It's one of those things where it's like, when I read a 5-star book, I know, but I feel like this is gonna be a 5-star series probably overall for me. I mean, I have to get there, but for this first book, like, really set high expectations for me for what's to come next. I did have 2 5-star books this month, and they really earned that rating. And I think, having caught up now on, so like the first 5-star book I'm going to talk about, with having read this book, I'm now fully caught up on this series. I'm hoping the author writes more in this world, because I think this is a 5-star author for me now too. I read The Tomb of Dragons by Katherine Addison. I loved this book. I just love her world building. Like, I love the world that she's built, where the series, sorry, I got like a random hair. What is even happening right now? Hold on. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. I love the world that she has built between, the Goblin Emperor, and I know we're calling this the Chronicles of Ozrith, but if you go on Goodreads, I think it all falls under like the Cemeteries of Amalo. I don't even fucking know, okay? What the name of the series is at this point, whatever it is, I am all in. I love the world that she's built. I love her characters. The main characters that she writes are just good people trying to do the right thing, people I can root for, people who are thoughtful and really considerate of how they treat people and making ethical decisions. It's just so refreshing. It is so refreshing to to read and have that be your main character that you follow, and it makes it so easy for me to root for them, especially in this series where our main character is a witness for the dead. So his role is to he can communicate with the dead, and it's really helpful for wanting to make sure a person's like final wishes are known. If there was any like confusion with their family, he can maybe get some answers for them. If there's anything potentially concerning about their death, like maybe it looks like it was a murder or anything like that, then the witness for the dead can help to get some answers from that dead person, their soul or spirit or whatever, try to get some answers to help solve any remaining questions and get justice if something was done to them. And our main character, as he goes about his work, he's just, it's so weird to say I have so much respect for a fictional character, but the qualities that Katherine Addison has given the main character of this series are qualities that I really respect in people in real life. And it's number one, being ethical. That's probably, I don't know, I realize as I get older, it's something I've always kind of been aware of, but as I get older, I realize it even more. It's probably like, if it's not the top trait that I think is most important for me when it comes to whether I have respect for someone, it's top 5 easily. Like, is this person ethical? I try to make ethical decisions in what I do. Like, I'm mindful of it. Personally and professionally, it's something that I heavily value. And so when I see that trait in others, it's people that I tend to really respect when I see that they really value being ethical, or at least making the effort to be ethical. Because I mean, what is ethics, right? There's all kinds of debates about it that I won't get into. I'm not even qualified for that. But, trying to do the right thing, people always being mindful of what is the right thing that should be done here, and is it possible to do that in this situation? And that's always our main character. Even though that might take him on down paths that are going to be difficult for him, he does it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And throughout the series, people ask him, why do you do this? Or, thank you so much for doing this. And he's like, I follow my calling. And it just drives home. The impression that I get throughout the series is even when it's things that he may not want to do, he does it anyway because he feels like it's the right thing to do. And I just respect that a lot. And God, I'm getting emotional even thinking about it, which is so weird. Again, this is a fictional character. But it's so nice to read about, and you don't encounter this I can't even think of another time really that you encounter this kind of thing outside of her work, where one of the biggest drivers of the characterization is characters who are trying to be mindful and thoughtful and do the right thing. It's really nice to read about. I wish there's more of this. That's what I want. I just really love it. I hope that she writes more in this world. 100%. I'm gonna read any that she does. I loved it. Having gushed, right? Oh my God, what is going, hold on. I got weird hair happening with my glasses. Hold on. All right, having just gushed about that book, and that is not my final book to talk about with what I read. There is a book where, God, I really debated. I debated which one was my favorite, but I think that this second one was my favorite because it elicited I don't know, a lot of emotional reaction. I don't know. My feelings might change in the long term about whether this was actually my favorite book over The Tomb of Dragons. But I really loved it. So I finally read through Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. The movie's coming out very soon, and I've been wanting to read this book since it came out because I loved The Martian, and so I've wanted to read Project Hail Mary since it came out. Just haven't gotten around to it before now, but I definitely wanted to read it before I go to see the movie. So I finally got this one. I read the ebook of it from my library. I understand why it's so popular and it has mass appeal, even for people who are not normally into sci-fi. I dabble in sci-fi. I don't do a lot with sci-fi. For me, there was some hard science fiction in this, because I'm not a hard science kind of gal though, and I've seen there's a lot of critique among people who are actually scientists who are like, nah, the science in here is kind of crazy, but you just have to ignore that because it's a good story. And so I will leave it to those professionals to make the judgment as to whether the actual science in this is legit or not, because that ain't me. But it sounded sciencey enough for me to like go along with the story, but it didn't detract from the story either, because a story where it's just talking about like science shit, that doesn't interest me personally. I think this had a really good balance of the human element and making it believable enough. I think that's probably why it's so appealing. So I rated this 5 stars. We follow our main character. Earth is under like a threat from outer space, and so scientists all over the world are trying to figure out a solution to this problem, and our main character is one of these scientists who's been working on the project to figure out how to save Earth, basically, from this external threat in space that has kind of presented itself. We follow most of the story is our character, he's going through, like, actively on a mission in space, and you see like a lot of the build up to how he got there, that you see that in flashbacks. I liked the way that the narrative was told with splitting it up like that and revealing more of the backstory to the reader as it went along, rather than telling it necessarily in chronological order. I thought this was a good decision. One of the things that I love best about this book is like actively avoided being discussed by people casually, and I completely understand why, because it was very surprising when like this element of the story became part of the story. So I won't ruin that for anyone else. What I will say, I loved this book so much. I cried at multiple parts of this book. I was deeply invested in our main character's journey, for what he had to go and do. God, like, I'm getting emotional again just thinking about it. I will absolutely read this again. I'm very excited for the movie. There's some things that I'm not entirely sure how they're going to translate it to the screen, but I felt that way about The Martian too. I read the book before I saw The Martian, and one of the things I really liked about The Martian, which I know there is some debate among people who have read it, a lot of Andy Weir's books are internal monologue, and you either love the character that he gives you or you hate them, because the bulk of what I think you're probably reading is the internal monologue of the main character. I like his main characters. I liked the main character in The Martian. I liked the main character in Project Hail Mary. So I enjoyed the inner monologue. I love a really well done inner monologue, like an author who can do, characterization through the inner monologue really well. And I really like it, but I know some people really don't like the characters that Andy Weir writes. So I don't know. I guess I guess keep that in mind. But that's mostly what I was curious about after I read The Martian and before I watched the movie, was how are they going to translate this to a movie? Because so much of what makes this book, I think, what I enjoyed about it was the characterization through that inner monologue. But they did it. It was a different story. Obviously, an adaptation is always going to have to be different. You know, you can't do the kinds of things visually that an author can do when they're just writing a book. But I thought that the adaptation was great, and I really enjoyed that movie. But again, I've got the same questions with Project Hail Mary, because so much of the book takes place like within the main character's mind, you know, listening to his thoughts and like memories and things like that. How are they going to translate some of that to the screen? But I'm very excited to go and see this movie, and I just really enjoyed this book. It's a lot of people that I know have already read it, so they are also very excited for the movie to come out. And yeah, I cried multiple times through that book. You could tell Andy Weir knows how, I think, to appeal to the masses and get people invested in his stories, and it was just really it was a worthwhile book. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then kind of like, I don't know, I guess to harken back to controversial, while I guess it's technically like my highest rated one, I don't know, because like Malice, dude, I think overall, like I said, this series is probably going to end up being the most impactful for me once I have finished it. If it continues on the way that Malice has and the way that Valor is so far, I think probably overall, I could see The Faithful and the Fallen being like one of my favorite like series of all time, books of all time. You know, whereas Project Hail Mary was really good, and I think for me 5 stars. Would it make a top 10 list? I guess time will tell. But I could see the potential for The Faithful and the Fallen to make like a top 10 list for me, if that makes sense. Anyway, so briefly I'm going to talk about my TBR for February. I've got 6 on this list that are highest priority. I don't know how many I'll get through in February. It is what it is, right? It's not a race. So I'm going to try to read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I know the movie is, I honestly don't know when it's coming out. It might already be out? I have no idea. I'll be real. I haven't decided if I'm going to go see the movie in theaters or not. So it kind of, I saw it was coming out and it just inspired me because I've been like wanting to read classics. It's been a while since I've read like a classic. This is a classic I have never read, so I'm gonna try to get through this. I also got this is the January book from the Broken Bindings fantasy subscription, The Bone Shard Daughter. This is book 1 in, oh, is it the Drowning Empire trilogy? Hold on, let me look. Yes, the Drowning Empire trilogy. I'm going to try to read this because I am making an effort this year to read books basically when I get them. So I just got that book in January. I'm going to try to read it by the end of February. And then A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. This is one of my Reddit fantasy books for bingo. So I really need to finish this by March 31st. February is my month for working on this. Continuing through Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, I'm going to read Alamancer Jack. It's a super short story, I think, in the Arcanum Unbounded collection. How many pages even is it? I think it's like 20 pages, so I don't foresee an issue with that. And then, of course, as I said, Valor by Mr. John Gwynne. This is book 2 in The Faithful and the Fallen. I am currently reading this right now. And, I'm almost finished with Bread Knives and Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldry, which is of course the third book in the Legends and Latte series. I really enjoy it. This is a carryover from January, but I should be finished with it pretty quickly here. So that is all. That is all for what I have read, what I'm tentatively planning to read in February. Yeah, overall it was a good reading month. I find it interesting that and I think it's partially because, like, with the audiobooks, they're often being rated much lower than physical books. I think a lot of it is, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm more inclined to keep it playing rather than DNFing it, because if I was physically reading some of these and I didn't like it, I would just DNF, and so there wouldn't be a low rating. But because I'm listening to it, it's a very passive activity. It's just something I can have on. I think that that's partially skewing. Also, the other big driver, I think, of what's skewing is some of these are things that I am uncertain to begin with if I'm going to like, and so I don't really want to expend a bunch of mental energy to physically read them. So I'm kind of putting them in a category where not really invested, so let me just listen to the audiobook, because if I don't like it, I won't be as mad that I spent the time to listen to it than I will if I spend the time to read it, because like reading is a lot more effort, and I'm more inclined to be mad if I dislike a book that I have been like physically reading, I think, than I am if I if I listen to it, if that makes sense. So I think that that's skewing. It'll be interesting to see, because I'm trying to make an effort to listen to more audiobooks. That's one of the things that I want to do. It'll be interesting to see if that ends up skewing my overall like scores for a month or year or whatever, for what I would rate, you know, like average ratings for books. I'm anticipating it's probably going to bring my average rating down. But we'll see. That's all. That's all for real that I've got today. Have you read any of these books? Do you have thoughts about them too? Let me know. Let me know if there's any books that you're really excited to read in February. And let me know if you have also read Project Hail Mary or are planning to before the movie comes out, if that's your plan too. I'm glad that I did, because I don't always read a book before I watch the movie, but in some instances, I'm really glad that I do it that way. In this case, I'm really glad that that's the order that I'm doing it in. And I'm really interested to see how they adapt some of what I loved the most onto the screen. So anyway, that's all that I've got for you today. Thank you so much for coming by. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.